The Chicago White Sox must stop some of these experiments they're trying out. Let's discuss on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the Chicago White Sox got their doors blown off by the St. Louis Cardinals yesterday, and one reason was poor defense by Lenyn Sosa at first base. One of the many experiments this club has got to stop that I want to discuss in the first segment. Then let's add one more hope for this rebuild producing, and finally, it's a Wayback Wednesday, and if Brooks Baldwin is going to be the next Leury Garcia, let's revisit exactly what Leury did for the White Sox. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, so Shane Smith did not have a good start, but he also had terrible defense behind him in the first two innings, especially because Lenyn Sosa and his terrible defensive instincts was playing first base. He is just not a first baseman. He's barely a second baseman, okay? And I don't get why the White Sox think, hey, here's an idea. Let's make him a first baseman. He's just not defensively inclined. Now, I will say this. When he does play second this season, he at least hasn't been like, oh my gosh, look away in horror, embarrassing bad like he was last year. And again, I got to put in another dollar to the mentioning 2024 season jar. But when he plays first base, my gosh, it is embarrassing. I mean, remember a couple of games ago where he just didn't even have his foot on the bag from a nice throw to first? He wasn't even close to the bag either. He was like, wait. Oh, I got to put my foot on the bag? And he had a chance to prevent a run from scoring in a 5-run second inning that the Cardinals had that basically blew the game out, out of the water for the White Sox. Instead of throwing, the Cardinals catcher charging from home because the base is loaded on a weak grounder hit right to Sosa. Sosa just went for the easy tag on the runner to first. Didn't even really bother to look at going to home. And the television replay broadcast, and even Steve Stone pointed out, he probably could have gotten that catcher out at home. I mean, by the time Sosa picks up the ball, if you look at the replay, the catcher is still like maybe halfway down the third baseline, maybe even only like a third of the way down. Probably could have gotten him out. Now, granted, Carroll would still have to apply the tag. And the next inning, the White Sox did have a chance to prevent a run from scoring on a double steal, and Carroll just didn't get the tag in time or in the right range. So I'm not saying it's, like he's going to definitely prevent the run. I mean, I get taking the easy out, but at least have the instincts to know that, hey, I got a catcher on third base and its base is loaded. And if I got a chance to throw to home, I should take it. And that's why this idea of Sosa playing first must stop. But some of these experiments that they're trying or players that they're kicking the tires on also have to stop. Like Vinny Capra and Josh Rojas still being on the roster. And if you are going to try these positional experiments, at least do some testing down in, say, AAA, where the games really don't matter. Like what the White Sox are rightfully doing with Brooks Baldwin. And I get your frustration over Baldwin once again being sent down to make room on the 26-man roster for Sosa as he returned from the 10-day IL. But if the idea is for him to be Leury Garcia 2.0 and even dare to dream a Ben Zobrist super utility starter, then he still probably could use some more defensive reps in the outfield. Because remember, his defense in the outfield was terrible this season. When they were starting to try him out, when they were starting to tinker with the idea of, hey, this guy could be a versatile starter for us. And there's nothing wrong with having versatile starters. I mean, Leury Garcia, as we'll talk about in the third segment, did provide some value playing all over the place. There's nothing wrong with having jack of all trades, super utility guys. But when he was taking very suspect lines to the ball in both right and left field and jumps on fly balls just didn't seem natural to him, maybe you might want to still try that out then and get him some reps in AAA, where his errors are not going to basically make headline news. And also recall, during that brief 3-game return, he still didn't show he was going to come out of his big league slump. I mean, I know they were all pitch hint at bats, but again, part of the super utility role is maybe you're not playing every day. Maybe you're still coming off the bench. You got to produce. And he had 3 strikeouts. And obviously, it's not a good look for the franchise when Baldwin then, they demote him down. He gets to Charlotte in time to play and has a monster night. I believe he had, 2 home runs and a double. But he has a history of hitting minor league pitching. He still has to prove, can he hit major league pitching? And we got some brief data at the beginning of the season, obviously. But then he went on this terrible slump. So he still needs to work in the outfield, because I do get the feeling once Luis Robert Jr. and Mike Tauchman is traded, although I would argue that you might have some more value of keeping at least Tauchman through the rest of the year and into next season, since he has 1 year left of ARB, and maybe trying to trade him next year because of his veteran leadership. There could be more value there as a bridge to Braden Montgomery. I still think Baldwin is one of the options to get regular playing time in the outfield. You get the feeling that he probably will be the starting center fielder once Luis Robert Jr. is traded. And the other thing is, he's still 24, so he's still at that age, although it's getting late early out there, as Yogi Berra once said, where he still should then still be getting everyday at-bats. And there's just no everyday at-bats in the outfield. Now, when Mike Tauchman's playing well, you're still trying to showcase Luis Robert Jr., and you still have to pay Andrew Benintendi. And Austin Slater still has the better career splits against left-handed hitting, and Michael A. Taylor is clearly the better defenseman out there. So I would rather have him get everyday at-bats at AAA. That's why I'm not losing my mind over Vinny Capra still being on this roster, despite his overall average being just barely above 100 and his WRC plus still deep in the negative. Just like when Jacob Amaya was up. If someone's going to ride the pine, let it be those no bat, all glove guys, because at least there's some late game defensive value. However, I do agree Capra getting some regular starts, that's got to stop. That experiment must end. I mean, kudos for him hitting an RBI sacrifice fly and having a hit yesterday. But him starting for the past 5 games, that is just organizational negligence. And I don't get what they're seeing, what the front office or even Will Venable are seeing. Because I always keep hearing John Triffin on the TV broadcast say the front office sees some potential to eventually hit. And I want to be like, just please stop. Please. I mean, first, what is it? The potential to hit his weight? Because that would be an improvement. Because he's still terrible. I mean, yes, he is hitting 172 since he's joined the White Sox, but his overall average is 108 after that terrible time in Milwaukee. His OPS for the Sox is 408. Overall OPS, 305. So what potential are they seeing? What am I missing? And I'll discuss in the second segment, if the potential is to just be a replacement level player, let's stop reaching that minimum floor. Let's start trying to see if we can get some guys that can be 1.5 to 2 F4 players. Because his only value right now is on the bench, coming late during, late leads or small deficits, because he still provides a good glove, 2 defensive run saves, 2 outs above average last time I checked, which is obviously better than Amaya's. But just stop giving this guy 3 to 4 at-bats when he's an automatic out. And playing Josh Rojas isn't much of a better option either. But that's the only way to keep Sosa off first, is, he's going to have to play third on days Miguel Vargas plays first. Until Coleman Montgomery is ready, and he hit a 3 RBI triple last night for Charlotte, I just see the front office and manager Will Venable leaning on playing Capra more at short for his defense. And that means Sosa is at first, especially against lefty starters. And I want to scream, I would just go with Ryan Noda, even if it's against a southpaw, and just see, can he get a walk? Because it's better to have a natural first baseman there rather than Sosa to continue to look lost. Because obviously, Sosa, you still want his bat until he stops hitting. He did have a double, scored a run last night. But I'd rather play Sosa at second And Capra and Rojas, they can be your late inning defensive replacements. And then you eventually DFA both of them once Montgomery's ready. Maybe you want to give Brian Ramos a look at the trade deadline, after the trade deadline at third. We always keep forgetting about him. And also, can the Jordan Leisure bullpen experience end? I mean, all he keeps doing is putting guys on base. Last 6 outings, he's allowed a hit or issued a walk in one of them. 3 times he's allowed those runners to score. And on June 9th, the stat, according to SouthsideShowdown.com, was he inherited 13 runners and allowed 8 of them to score. So please get on to the next guy. Well, quickly getting back to Brooks Baldwin. While I get the cries of frustration with this demotion, one possibility keeps getting overlooked. Might just be a replacement level player that the Sox have drafted and developed. And let's discuss how it'd be nice for this rebuild to at least draft or sign international free agents and develop them into something better than replacement level. And that's next on Locked On White Sox. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. And I know my wife, she was getting stressed out tracking all of our expenses, but no more since we started using Monarch Money. And we've been using it to make sure we can watch where we should cut on spending on things we don't need and plan out saving for retirement, which for us is actually coming sooner than we think. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter again. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you're not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so Lenyn Sosa is currently at a .6 F4. And overall for his career, minus 0.3. Brooks Baldwin is at minus 0.8 with a career minus 0.7 F4. And if you're like, oh, I don't care about WAR, I'm traditional. Again, F4 is a great tool of just measuring overall value of how these guys can help you win. Because the whole point is win ball games, win as many as you can. And while I know I've been preaching wins and losses don't matter this season, at some point, you got to hope that this build, I know I called it a rebuild, but I should always stick to my stance that this is a build for how far this organization has decayed, to the fact that it's basically just almost a whole new organization that you're building up. But I would like this build, or if you want to go semantically with this version of the rebuild, to yield players that this team drafts and develops or signs internationally to actually produce more than this. I mean, it is an organizational win for the White Sox to get a 12th round pick to the big leagues like Baldwin. But that is literally reaching the minimum when it comes to a pick like that. That's like the minimal acceptable standard. He's a 12th round pick. Hey, you got him to the big leagues. I mean, that is something to be pat yourself on the back. But in essence, basically, you drafted a 4A player, if that's all he's ever going to be. And why I'm discussing this is I was talking about this on X, formerly Twitter, with my buddy Bez of OnTapSportsNet.com about his tweet regarding Baldwin. And this is what he tweeted out. For those watching on YouTube, I've got the tweet up. And then for those listening on Apple or Spotify, I'll read it out. This is at Bez Beyond the Pen. Brooks Baldwin will be sent back and forth between Chicago and Charlotte, marginally improving every year until he runs out of options, at which point he'll be DFA'd, traded, or non-tendered. Hashtag talk in 2027. And one reason I sparked the conversation with him is that actually kind of like reminded me of Lenyn Sosa. As at some point, the White Sox will need to upgrade over him. Because if you're a Sosa truther, his WRC plus is 89. And he has just a 2.4% walk rate. And if you look at his on-base percentage and his OPS, it doesn't meet the mustard of, hey, this is a guy we can move forward with. Yeah, I mean, I've always called him a Godfather 3 player. Just when you think you're out, he does something that draws you back in. And right now, the only thing that he's giving you is he's giving you a traditional average, and you can't poo-poo away a guy that still can hit 270, 280. I mean, it's still providing hits, but he doesn't provide much power, even though he could theoretically hit for power, as I keep hearing Steve Stone say on the television broadcast, and he is a way smarter guy than me. So I'm not going after him on that one. But it just, I haven't seen it in the eye test. You see it very rarely. But at some point, he will have to be traded or DFA'd or non-tendered because you want to have an upgrade. And maybe he does get traded at the deadline. I mean, this is a bad seller's market. But again, maybe a contender like, I think I saw an article, I forgot where it was, but the Yankees were potentially looking at Sosa because they do need second base help. Maybe they are like, you know what, we can drop him down in the order. And if he just hits for average, we're fine with that. We can use that at the bottom of the order. And that's where we can get some value for him because, again, as I said in the earlier segment, he can at least this season, if you position him correctly, if you tell him to stand where he needs to stand, he's actually been okay. It's just first base, like his instincts just go, just gone. But the possibility exists for Baldwin to just marginally get better to where he is like Sosa. I mean, that was Sosa's career. Constant demotions. And now, coming into the spring training, there was the possibility if he didn't hit in spring training, he was going to get DFA because he's out of options. And that sounds like Lenyn 2.0 rather than Leury 2.0, like, although they're calling him White Leury, but like the guys from the 108 have been saying. And the one thing I brought up in our actions is I just hope even the first round picks, and those are guys that actually you should be hoping turn out to be those 3 to 6 F4 players, the all-stars and the superstars. Those are the WAR numbers that those guys have. But I'll even settle, though, with how this organization has struggled to develop hitting. Like Jacob Gonzalez and Colson Montgomery, can they at least be 1.5 to 2 F4 guys? Can they at least raise the floor? I'll settle for that right now. And again, when it comes to the overall value, F4 is just that simple number of measuring overall value. And all the White Sox ever seem to do, at least when it comes to drafting or signing an international free agency, is just develop replacement level or maybe a 1 win above level player. And that's just, why do you think we're in this current state we're in? I mean, look back at the last rebuild. In terms of players the team drafted and got to the big leagues, Andrew Vaughn, a career minus 1.7 F4. Danny Mendick, minus 0.2 F4. Although if he doesn't have that knee injury in 2022, maybe he does reach 1.5 F4 status. Zach Remillard, 0.3 F4. Gavin Sheets, his best WAR season was 2021 with 0.5 when he played 54 games. In 2022, when he played over 100 games, 0.2. 2023, minus 1.5. Last season, minus 0.9. He had to get out of the South Side to even just be at least a replacement level player or above a replacement level player, where he's currently at, I think, a 1 F4 for the Padres. Nick Madrigal came the closest to a 1.5 F4 with a 1.3 in 2021, but he also only played 54 games. You're seeing a pattern here? Not only have the White Sox consistently had to go to other organizations to get its core pieces for the last rebuild, but they are doing that right now. Edgar Caro, acquired from the Angels. Chase Mydroth from Boston. Miguel Vargas from the Dodgers. Shane Smith, Rule 5 pick from the Brewers. Mike Vassell, claimed off of waivers from the Rays after they took him in the Rule 5 draft. And if Kyle Till can prove his worth, he was acquired from Boston. You got only 2 players that I would say the Sox drafted and developed that I would add to this core that you can move forward with. Pitchers Davis Martin and Sean Burke. And Martin might be traded at the deadline, and Burke is hanging on to his core status by a thread. And that's not to say that, there's anything wrong with that, but this core is going to need help, as I discussed on Monday's show. And since the Sox don't have any more Garrett Crochets to trade, it will have to come via the draft and some of the guys his team has already drafted, because Jerry Reinsdorf still owns his team through 2029. He did not authorize a major spending spree during the last rebuild. I doubt he does it on his way out the door. So that's why at this point, I just want Jacob Gonzalez to be a competent MLB starter at second base. 1.5 to 2 F4 is my range for competent MLB starter. Same for Colson. Produce me some power. Produce that type of value, even if all he hits is 210. And maybe a 750 OPS. But if he's a 1.5 to 2 F4 because of his power, I doubt he gets there with a 210, 750 average. That's usually replacement level. But I'm just saying, at a minimum, stop just getting guys to the big leagues that you drafted or signed an international free agency. That can't be enough in this rebuild. Being replacement level or just barely above cannot be enough. Because as Buzz pointed out on our Twitter exchange, the Twins have been killing the Sox for years with guys in the lineup who range from 1.5 to 2.5 F4. And look at the Tigers right now. One of the best teams in baseball. Riley Green, 1.9. Dylan Dingler, I love that name, 1.8. Spencer Torkelson, 1.6. Tariq Skubal, over 3 F4. 4 core guys drafted by the Tigers producing winning value. And then the Tigers rounded out that roster through trade acquisitions and free agency signings. And Gary Carpenter, he was also a 19th round pick. I believe he's at still 0.7 F4, though when he plays the White Sox, he's like 90, it seems like. So at the very least, if the Sox can continue to go for high floor guys in the draft, let that floor be 1.5 to 2 F4 production. Because I just feel like that floor is, we're going to draft a guy in the first round that we know can at least be a big league player. Is he going to be a good one? We don't know. Is he going to be a valuable one? Maybe. But he can make it to the big leagues. And P.S., I still say in rounds 1 or 2, go for high ceiling guys. So that's my other PSA there. All right, well, getting back to Brooks Baldwin again, if he is potentially White Leury, as some fans have dubbed him, let's look back at Leury Garcia's super utility role with the White Sox on this week's Wayback Wednesday after the break. All right, let's be real. Coffee isn't just a drink. It's a ritual, a lifeline, the thing that gets you from half asleep to fully functioning. And I can attest to that. And if it's that essential, why settle for anything less than amazing? And that's where Trade Coffee comes in. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S., delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Whether you're a cold brew fan or a pour-over purist, they got a roast you're going to love. And you know me, I love my coffee. I'm a big fan of a good dark roast. And after taking the trade quiz, I am looking forward to trying out the new brands they're sending me, because I'm no grocery store, label buyer guy. I go for the good stuff. You're darn right I spring a little. And Trade Coffee has a ton of brands to send you that will help you get going in the morning and then enjoy it throughout the day. And if the first match isn't perfect, Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. And right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's TRADE.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1-month trial. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. And again, just a little preview of things to come, at least next month. During the All-Star break, I am going to Disney World again. Hopefully I don't suffer severe dehydration or catch COVID like I did the last time. But again, my daughter, she loves going there. And she's still at the age where she still wants to hang around with her parents. So we're going to go there for vacation. So while the draft is going on, and I do believe it's a pivotal draft, I will be recording shorts on June 13th and June 14th, still from Disney World. But otherwise, I will be having a look back on the 2005 World Series. I've got a whole bunch of guests that I'm going to have on, talk with, share memories, share stories. And you can always email me at lockdownwhitesox@gmail.com, some of your memories too, and we can discuss that when I get back, or we can also discuss it in October. So Leury Garcia was one of the longest tenured White Sox players, played 10 seasons. He also hit one of the most famous postseason home runs with that 3-run blast in Game 3 of the 2021 ALDS. And then it was all downhill from there for the White Sox and Garcia too, as the White Sox, for some reason, paid him a 3-year contract to stick around, when super utility guys like him, they basically should be allowed to walk, especially when they reach age 31. At that point, it's thank you for your service. Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying through your prime performance years. But now we're going to move on. Or you just stay at 1-year deals. Instead, they gave him, I think, what is a 3-year, $15 million deal, or like a $16 million deal. And what made it even worse was manager Tony La Russa thought he could be an everyday player in 2022. When it was clear, like, age 31, yeah, he fell off a cliff. See his at-bats? I remember that excuse. Tony La Russa was saying, like, look at his at-bats. Yeah, they were outs, Tony. And I get that he was basically an everyday player in 2019, but he was 28 that season. And also, that was a lost season. So it's fine if Leury Garcia is an everyday player producing decent numbers in 2019 or even 2018. But when you were in a contention window, he should have been man number 26 on the roster. Or again, he just shouldn't have been on the roster. It should have been like, thanks for the memories, Larry. We appreciate that home run. It was a great home run, but we're not going to pay you 3 years, $15 million. Garcia produced a 4B WAR career over his 10 seasons with the Sox, a career 254 average. His career 648 OPS, though. If you want Brooks Baldwin to be White Leury, I will try to aim, though, for a higher ceiling. Hope maybe Baldwin can be Ben Zobrist, although, again, it's not like Garcia was such detrimental, like his career numbers, because if you look at certain points of his career, he did provide some value and helped out the White Sox. And again, he was a valuable member on the 2021 squad. He was fine. It was just this idea of like, let's have him bat second. Like I remember Tony always batting him second during that disappointing 2022 season. And again, he did provide some solid production in that super utility role because he played mostly, I think he was second. He could play right. He could play center. He could play short. I mean, I think he played almost every position at some point. Did have that 279, 310, 378 slash line in 2019 over 140 games. In 82 games in 2018, 271, 303, 376. And in 2021, in 126 games, 267, 335, 376. I mean, obviously, he was never going to be a slugging guy, but he at least had a on-base percentage over 300. I mean, it wasn't in that good range where you want to be at the 340 to 360, but it was still decent enough to get on base. So if the White Sox even get that type of production from Baldwin when the club is competitive, it's not awful. Just don't pay Baldwin when he becomes a free agent. And also, as I discussed in the first segment, there's still the possibility that all he's going to be is another Lenin Sosa. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with another check-in on last year's trade that brought Miguel Vargas to Chicago and sent Eric Fedde to St. Louis, since Fedde is slated to start tomorrow. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding ending some of these lineup experiments that clearly are not working, this rebuild hopefully producing better value players, and the Wayback Wednesday look back at Leury Garcia. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me, LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.